With its enthralling world, rich cast of characters, and a page-turning story that will keep you hooked for its duration, The Outer Worlds is one of the best RPGs in years. The Outer Worlds is the RPG I've been waiting for this whole generation. It doesn't just have the unbelievably deep storytelling developer Obsidian is known for, it combines it with varied and rewarding quest design and great performances. In many ways, it feels like the jump between Fallout New Vegas till now that I wish Fallout 3 to Fallout 4 had been. The game begins with the player being woken up from cryosleep on a vessel called the Hope, a ship full of the Earth's greatest minds. After the Hope is lost, you, as its sole conscious survivor, must discover what happened to the ship and investigate the world around you. A colony known as Halcyon, which is controlled by the megalomaniacal face of space capitalism, the Board. The game does what all my favourite RPGs do. It quickly introduces compelling characters, shows you the scope of the world, and lets you complete quests to give you an understanding of how things like combat, dialogue, and other attributes affect the way you play the game. Within the first 2 hours, you'll have your bearings and be desperate to explore. And the scope of that world is massive. I shudder to think about just how many lines of dialogue had to be written for this game. Just the conversations that lead you through the main path would take most people a lifetime, but beyond that, every named character has scores of backstory, some of which lead to quests I had no idea were available. It makes you want to talk to every named character, unlike other RPGs that just float a question mark above the quest giver's head and render the rest of the occupants of the town about as useful as dustbins. One of my favourite things about the game is the way it handles morality. This is always tricky in RPGs because in the past developers have been guilty about making the difference between good and bad whether or not you blow up an entire town. There's subtlety in the Outer Worlds. You're not told whether or not the things you do are actually explicitly bad or good, you're forced to question your own morals and how your character's actions would make you feel as a person. As an example, I had an incredibly high speech stat, so I was able to talk my way through a lot of the encounters. But this also meant that if I needed to, I could very easily lie or intimidate characters into doing what I want. I thought of my character as a fake Han Solo because who doesn't love a space cowboy, so a few lies here and there were okay, but when I used my intimidation to take more credits from a character that had been nothing but helpful, I felt remorse. And I didn't need a small devil popping up in the top corner of the screen to make me feel that. Your personal politics are going to vastly impact how you deal with the choices in this game. It's a game that rewards reading every terminal and exhausting character conversation trees so that you can be completely informed when the time comes to make decisions that will inexorably change the course of the game. This is the promise that so many RPGs make and never deliver on, and this is just one example. The game is full of stuff like this. The game's writing isn't only introspective and at times challenging, it's also genuinely funny. I can count the amount of games that have made me laugh in one hand, but The Outer Worlds is full of Douglas Adams style humour that makes the whole thing rich with personality. Whether it's just a daft quip in a dialogue tree, or it's a companion that's a mech designed for cleaning that can't stop shouting advertising slogans for dish soap while it's killing marauders. The Outer Worlds has once-in-a-generation quality writing. The game's shooting isn't spectacular by any means, but it is functional. I would have really liked it to be a bit more satisfying, but it's definitely better than Fallout 3 or 4's. However, where those games have VATs to offset poor shooting, The Outer World has a mechanic that will slow down the world and point out weak spots. This works fine, but I hardly ever used it. Enemies rarely show up in big enough hordes to cause many problems. I was also almost always joined by two companions who, after a few upgrades, would often kill all the enemies before I had the chance to reload. The game does get exceptionally easy towards the back third, but there are difficulty options for those that enjoy a bit of death. I would wager that the gunplay would become grating for someone that planned to shoot their way through the entire thing, but I think this would be doing the game an unbelievable disservice. Throughout the game, you'll be joined by companions that can accompany you on missions. These characters are introduced organically, and it was always a nice surprise to find out they could join me on my ship. Not only are they great in battle, but they also have so many lines of dialogue that contribute and change conversations with main characters in the world. For example, Parvati the engineer will make comments about a mission task that involves engineering, and the quest giver will respond to her and comment about how it's a good thing you brought her along. I've finished every quest in the game I could find, and I'm certain there are hundreds of lines of dialogue that I've missed due to picking different companions. Those companions also boost your stats, resulting in the slightly ludicrous situation where I had like 140 persuade skill. I mean, what can I say? My character's a handsome devil. I mean, look at that face. Visually, the game is extremely impressive. It's colourful in a way that Fallout never was, but it still manages to evoke the mid-20th century Americana that was in vogue when the sci-fi serials that clearly inspired this game were written. There aren't a lot of planets, and the actual open world space of said planets is rather small, especially when compared to its contemporaries. But this means I never felt bored endlessly trekking through brown geometry. The art design in the cities especially is fantastic and tells you all you need to know about the place before you even speak to anyone. Edgewater is a down on its luck factory town where buildings are made from scrap metal and everything's a bit dingy, whereas Byzantium is a Columbia-esque paradise where the bourgeoisie rub shoulders while avoiding getting run over by floating advertisements. The vocal performances are uniformly excellent, each character is memorable, unique, and never comes close to the pantomime villain style theatrics that other big bads in RPGs tend to. This is essential because the game has to be able to convince you to side with the board should you want to. The realism of the performances contributes to the shades of grey that the game paints its morality in. While the combat isn't stunning, the sheer number of ways encounters can play out and their domino effect on the rest of the game is at the same time overwhelming in its scope, but logical and realistic. Characters react like human beings would. You don't have to save before every interaction because you select a dialogue option that you thought was innocuous and you end up shooting the shopkeeper through the head. The Outer Worlds is a fantastic game that not only sets the bar for Western RPGs to follow, it also reaffirms Obsidian's place as an absolute powerhouse of the genre. Thanks for watching this review of The Outer Worlds. Leave a comment below telling me if you're going to pick up the game. Remember to subscribe to BBC The Social Gaming, and until next time, I'm Jordan Midler. See you later.